What's good, YouTube? It's your boy, Blue Blood Sports TV, back at y'all with another one. So, I wanted to talk about something that has been glossed over, and not too many people paid too much attention to what was said by Olympic gold medalist, undefeated, retired, Hall of Fame, iconic superstar boxer, former pound-for-pound king, Andre S.O.G. Ward. Andre Ward retired very early, 32 wins, no losses, no draws, 16 wins by way of knockout, 6 feet tall with a 71-inch arm reach, okay? He last fought June of 2017 when he took on and defeated and stopped Sergey Crusher Kovalev in a highly anticipated rematch of the first fight that had taken place November of 2016, in which Andre Ward won a unanimous decision. This time he got an 8th round stoppage over Sergey Kovalev, okay? Andre Ward was recently asked on his social media, what fights did he regret since he retired at the age of 32, the tender age of 32? What fights did he regret not having in his career that he wanted the most? Okay, number one, he said he wanted the highly anticipated rematch with Carl the Cobra Foch, British superstar boxer whom he beat, and he wanted a rematch in the UK. And then he stated that number two was Gennady Triple G Golovkin, who was the reigning middleweight unified world champion when he was active. And he said he turned it down in 5 minutes. And that got a lot of traction. Okay, a lot of people then focused on Gennady Golovkin, who responded to Andre Ward and told Andre Ward, stop telling lies to the fans, tell the truth. You didn't offer the fight, you didn't want to fight me, so on and so forth, etc. And then Andre Ward responded by calling Triple G Little G, you know, so it gained a lot of traction and a lot of attention. But there was another important note that got glossed over, and that was number 3, okay? He had 3 guys on this list, and the third guy got glossed over and overlooked simply because Triple G responded to Andre Ward. And when he responded to Andre Ward, that became the focal point, okay? Everybody got locked in and focused on Andre Ward and Triple G going back and forth. Triple G saying Andre Ward was lying to the fans, and stop lying to the fans. You jealous because you never was the pay-per-view star. You never did the big numbers that I did. And then Andre Ward responding and calling him Little G and saying I got the proof, so on and so forth. But the third guy on that list, to me, was more important than anybody. And that was, he made mention of 2-time unified heavyweight world champion, British superstar boxer, Anthony Joshua. Anthony Joshua, who is now 24 wins, 2 losses, no draws, 22 big wins by way of knockout. One time in his career, he was knocked out, 32 years of age, 6'6" with an 82-inch arm reach. Okay, so Andre Ward, he stated that Anthony Joshua fight was one of the fights that I regret not having. Okay, and, you know, we know that Andre Ward is confident. He's an Olympic gold medalist. He's a technician in the ring, very skilled, high ring IQ, respectable power, very savvy, very slick, you know, and hadn't lost since he was about 12 years old. What's interesting is his trainer, VIRGIL Hunter, okay? VIRGIL has always been on record and saying that he believes that Andre Ward can fight and beat Anthony Joshua. Andre Ward was saying that he believes that he can beat Anthony Joshua. And it was getting glossed over. Nobody was truly giving it much credence. But it's abundantly clear that Andre Ward clearly believed that he can fight and beat Anthony Joshua. That was the third guy on his list. Anthony Joshua is a heavyweight. Anthony Joshua is 6 inches taller than Andre Ward. Anthony Joshua has an 11-inch arm reach advantage over Andre Ward at 82 inches to Andre Ward's 71. He has 11-inch arm advantage over Andre Ward. But VIRGIL Hunter, he always stated that the fact that Anthony Joshua is so stiff, he has a lot of power, but he's not fluid. He's not. He's very robotic. He's stiff. Okay, and VIRGIL, he always stated that he believed that Andre Ward can beat Anthony Joshua. So this was truly, truly a plan. Okay, this was not fictional. Okay, this was not just some, a shot in the dark. This was not, a fantasy. This was reality. They were actually looking to fight Anthony Joshua and create history. Now, Andre Ward is a 2-division champion. He was unified at super middleweight, 168. Okay, he won the Super 6 tournament. He beat the likes of Bad Chad Dawson. Okay, he beat Carl Froch. He beat Mikkel Kessler. He beat some very, very quality opponents at super middleweight. Okay, he beat Sullivan Barrera. He beat Chad Dawson, Carl Froch, Arthur Abraham, Saki Obika, Alan Green, Mikkel Kessler, Edison Miranda. People don't remember how good Edison Miranda was and how tough of an opponent he was. Okay, he beat some very, very credible opponents. And so with that said, his career is very bright. And he unified the belts. Then he moved up to light heavyweight, and he beat Sergey Kovalev for the unified belts. So he unified in 2 separate divisions. Now he beat Sergey Kovalev for the unified belts in one shot. But he became unified at 168. He wasn't able to become undisputed. But it's abundantly clear that Anthony Joshua, they were focused on Anthony Joshua. So when Virgil Hunter continued to tell the world that he believed that, Anthony Joshua and Andre Ward was a good fight, and Anthony Joshua and Andre Ward could win the fight, many people thought it was just, wishful thinking, or, and maybe people thought it was just simply, it was a dream, right? It wasn't something that was actually reality. Okay, it was a fantasy matchup, but it wasn't a fantasy matchup. This was on something Andre Ward was focusing on. And stylistically, Andre Ward is fluid. He's mobile, okay? He's very skilled. He's very technically savvy. He's very slick, very high ring IQ. And so this for sure is a fight that Andre Ward is winnable for Andre Ward. Now, we just saw Anthony Joshua lose to a very technically skilled, savvy boxer, okay, in Oleksandr Usyk, Olympic gold medalist, former undisputed cruiserweight, turned unified heavyweight world champion, in Oleksandr Usyk. He beat Anthony Joshua unanimous decision. Now, Oleksandr Usyk is bigger than Andre Ward, okay? Oleksandr Usyk is 6'3", okay? So he's not, Andre Ward is 6 feet tall, but I mean, skill and height, it doesn't always matter, obviously, but he's 6'3" with a 78-inch arm reach. So Oleksandr Usyk is 3 inches taller than Andre Ward, and he has a 7-inch arm reach advantage over Andre Ward, okay? So he's taller and more rangy than Andre Ward, and he's a southpaw who's very slick and very agile, okay? And he was outboxing Anthony Joshua, okay? Well, now there's another guy who's compatible to Andre Ward, but he's still bigger, and that's Andy Ruiz Jr., who beat Anthony Joshua with his hand speed and his savviness and his quick and his reflex and his counterpunch ability, and that's Andy Ruiz Jr. And he's 6'2" with a 74-inch arm reach, so he too is still 2 inches taller than Andre Ward with a 3-inch arm reach advantage over Andre Ward. But Andre Ward is a more savvy, more slick, more technical, savvy boxer than both, I believe, Oleksandr Usyk and Andy Ruiz Jr. Definitely Andy Ruiz Jr. Andy Ruiz has a high ring IQ, but he has very fast hands, put combinations together very fast, and he has power. But Andre Ward is more technically savvy and skilled than Andy Ruiz. Oleksandr Usyk is very skilled, very technically savvy, very a tactician in the ring. A technician in the ring. So it's interesting that Andre Ward, this was a reality. This wasn't a fantasy matchup for Andre Ward and Virgil Hunter, as they've been talking about this for quite some time. So being void of injury, Andre Ward would have actually looked to go up to heavyweight. Now, I wonder if he would have been looking to skip over cruiserweight, to compete directly at heavyweight against Anthony Joshua, because again, he competed at light heavyweight at 175, and then he moved up, and then he would have had to moved up to heavyweight over 200 pounds, right? Andre Ward, again, he's not the smallest guy, right? But he's not the biggest guy either, right? Now, we did have the likes of Mike Tyson. Mike Tyson competed, in the heavyweight division. Mike Tyson is 5'10". Mike Tyson was short, but the style of Mike Tyson and the style of Andre Ward is completely different. Okay, the approach is completely different, and obviously Mike Tyson's power. Mike Tyson is 5'10" with a 71-inch arm reach, but his ability to move his head, get up underneath his opponents, and put combinations together and throw punches with fast. I think Mike Tyson's hand speed is faster than Andre Ward's, and obviously his head movement and his power is more than Andre Ward's. But size-wise, that would be, a good, comparison as far as height and arm reach goes. Mike Tyson, 5'10" with a 71-inch arm reach, he was able to get it done. But again, styles make fights, and the style of Mike Tyson is completely different. Now we know Roy Jones, he went up to heavyweight, okay? But even Roy Jones at 5'11" has a 74-inch arm reach. His 3-inch arm reach advantage over Andre Ward, okay? So he has even longer arms than Andre Ward does in Roy Jones. Now, he beat Andy Ruiz. Roy Jones beat John Ruiz, who was 6'2" with a 78-inch arm reach, okay? So he had 4 inches short. His arm reach was 4 inches shorter than Anthony Joshua, But Roy Jones was, again, Roy Jones is 5'11" with a 74-inch arm reach. So he's an inch shorter than Andre Ward, but he has 3-inch arm reach advantage, right? And again, Roy Jones was arguably the greatest athlete to ever grace the squared circle, okay? So Roy Jones is an anomaly. So then you look at, the guy you most compare him to is size-wise would be, that of, Mike Tyson, right? But he don't have that explosiveness and the power and the quickness of Mike Tyson, right? Vander Holyfield was 6'2" with a 78-inch arm reach. So these guys have extremely long arms, and they have specialties that Andre Ward is just doesn't possess. But he's very technically savvy, okay? Very quick, very slick, and has a high ring IQ. So could he have beaten Anthony Joshua? Possibly. With his movement, he's going to be quicker than Anthony Joshua. He has hand speed advantage over Anthony Joshua. And Anthony Joshua is very robotic. So it would have been a very, very interesting note. But Andre Ward, this was a reality. Andre Ward was actually trying to make this fight happen with Anthony Joshua. Unless, barring the injury, he would have looked to fight Anthony Joshua. So that's all I got for y'all, man. Let me know what y'all think. Could Andre Ward have actually beaten Anthony Joshua, or Anthony Joshua have beaten Andre Ward? Let me know what y'all think. That's all I got for y'all. Y'all already know what it is. It's your boy Blue Blood Sports TV. Hate, like, comment, and subscribe. You haven't subscribed, hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, hit the bell icon to get all the new notification. Follow me on Instagram at Blue Blood Sports TV, all one word. Y'all already know what it is. Shout out to the entire LDBC. Shout out to New Media. Shout out to Black Media Row. Make sure you like and share these videos. That's all I got for y'all. Peace.
Hi, my name is Heather Bahid Hardy, and you're watching Blue Blood Sports TV.